If you want to, feel free to pull up the presentation. I know this is being recorded and it will be shared out later on YouTube. So you can always come back and rewatch this. You've got the presentation link over there. So being brought to you today by Educator Alexander. Desiree is actually my Google Innovator Coach. She and I met a little more than a year ago, and it's been a wonderful connection. My PLN has grown greatly, and I'm super excited to be here on her behalf. So let's talk about this, Google Classroom. It's basically a mini, easy to use LMS, right? It's not truly an LMS. They consider it more of a CMS, a classroom management system. It's the ebb and flow of all of the digital work and ideas and activities that a teacher would have with their students. So keep that in mind as we go through this, that it's not fully built out, but it is built out enough. And I will say it continually gets built upon. There's always more stuff, or somebody shares like a workaround or a trick that they found, or a way to do something that works better. So constantly be out there like looking at different things. And if you check out the additional resources that I have linked down at the bottom, this is an interactive presentation, if you will. Clicking on each of these numbers will take you directly to that particular topic. And same will the additional resources. You can also just flow through this slide deck with me if you'd like, and follow along and make your little notes. So we're going to go ahead and get started, because the number one, I put it as number one, it is the top thing that I cannot stress enough. You have to have the right perspective on your Google Classroom. And if you can get the right perspective, you're going to see benefits far beyond what you could have imagined with your students. So let's check out what I have about perspective. A lot of times, historically, like go back like in our traditional pre-COVID world, Google Classrooms were set up and teachers would pop stuff in there, sometimes randomly, sometimes just when they needed to, and kids were there and the teacher could guide them. The teacher's standing, back here behind the students. They can see the student's screen. They can see what they're clicking on or not clicking on, or if they're having trouble with their mouse or their trackpads or whatever device that they're working on. And the teacher can guide them in person. That's no longer what we can bank on, is it? Like, we just can't bank on that anymore. A lot of schools around here, it's kind of a very mixed bag around where I'm teaching. Some schools are completely remote. Some schools are in a hybrid situation, and some schools are like mine where we went back face to face. They all have struggles with them, and setting up your classroom can really kind of help alleviate a lot of those struggles and keep your students where you need them to be, whether they're in front of you, some are there and some are at home, or they're all at home. Setting up your classroom with the right perspective paves the way for success. Now, when I was talking to my teachers in my district, Google Classroom is not about you, the teacher. It's not, and that kind of feels like a little bit of a slap in the face. And I don't mean it to be. But if you stop and think about it, you're a professional. A lot of us have advanced degrees. I mean, master's degrees, 2 master's degrees, master's plus 30 hours of continuing education. I mean, we'll figure it out, right? And to top it off, like, we're the ones putting it in there. Of course we know where it's at. We put it there, wherever it's at. But our students don't have that experience. They don't have that background with it. Some of our kids, this is the very first time that they've ever even used Google Classroom. And as young as they are using it in kindergarten, first grade, some of them aren't great readers yet. They're still working on all of that. They're still building all of those foundations. And we as teachers need to be very conscious of that. And we need to put that in front of us and say, yes, I'm a teacher and I need to get X, Y, and Z to them, but I need to get it to them in a manner that they can use it, they can find it, and they can access it and do it, because ultimately that's the goal. You put items in your classroom so that the kids can use it or do it or work with it or manipulate it. And if we don't have that perspective, our classroom becomes this kind of nightmarish place for these kids, and their parents are trying to help them. And a lot of times it just kind of like, I can't figure this out, I'm not going to do it. And that's what I want to take away. Get rid of that. Get those cobwebs out of there for the kids. So if you can stop and you can go, okay, I can't think like a teacher right now. I have to think of one of my students. Step out of your teacher role and go, okay, as a student in my own classroom, how can I make this make sense? And honestly, it's all about simplification. Keep things simple. Don't use crazy fancy acronyms. Keep it simple, straightforward. I've got a little tip over there with the eyeballs. And this is probably one of my favorite tips to suggest to teachers, because Google doesn't natively have this ability. It's to either use a fake student. You can ask for a fake student and then join your classroom as that fake student. Keep in mind, this fake student will never complete work unless you complete the work on their behalf. That's always tuck that nugget away for yourself. But if you have a fake student, you literally can put yourself in the place of a student in your classroom. You can see what they see. Now, on that topic, I also suggest that down in the bottom left-hand corner of your Google Classroom, there's a little circle with a question mark in it. It's a place where if you click on it, you can give Google feedback. I've told all of my teachers, use that daily, use it weekly, or use it when you remember to do this, but click on it and give Google the feedback that the teachers have to have a student view. Tell Google, they listen. A lot of the things that have come about as updates and upgrades in Google Classroom are a reflection of, thousands of teachers. Google, I need a student view, right? Keep that in mind. Put that forward to Google. But having that student view, I'm telling you, it will blow your mind when you stop and you look at it that way. Because you have to make these classrooms work for them. Otherwise, they're not going to do the work. Another thing that I've got down at the bottom is your naming conventions. It's no longer, I have this stack of paper sitting here and I'm going to hand them out and the kids are going to have it directly in front of them. When we're working in this digital world, we have to be able to guide our students, whether they're in front of us, we're in a hybrid situation, or we're completely remote. We've got to be able to get our kids where we need them to be efficiently, because the more time spent digging through and scrolling or clicking or trying to find, the less time they are working on the actual work. So I have highly suggested using, and this is a tip that I borrowed from Alice Keeler, is using a numbering system. Put those numbers out there for them. And Alice Keeler suggested using 3 numbers. I'm not saying that you're ever going to get up to that 100 mark, but it gives yourself space to build. And again, for little kids, like if you're talking kindergarten, first grade, when you use those numbers, they tend to recognize numbers a little bit easier and quicker than if you were to use letters or words. Just a little tip for the little ones, hashtag, pound sign, number sign, whatever you want to call it, 001, hashtag 009, hashtag 015, to be able to say to a student or parent for an email, phone call through Dojo or another messaging system, Remind, whatever it is, hey, complete number 15 tonight for homework. Or the student is going to be out for 2 weeks. Hey, just keep working, follow along on the numbers. It gives them a sequence of items to do. It puts it kind of chronological if you keep the numbers, in the appropriate order. So if you've finished number 2, naturally you move on to number 3. Then you move on to 4. I still recommend putting that title in there. And on top of that, this is kind of for fun, but it also works really great for our students that struggle with reading, or for our little ones, that are working on learning to read, using emojis. Number 1, it's so fun. It is so fun. But number 2, for our students that maybe can't read everything independently, putting numbers and an emoji. Hey, it's number 5 with the pumpkin next to it. Halloween activities for Friday. Whatever you like, Think about those kinds of things. Put yourself in your students' shoes. Now, I could probably go on with this for a very long time. It is something that I am incredibly passionate about. And I want teachers to understand this is not a knock on them, but these classrooms are not for us. These classrooms are for our students. We have to keep that in mind. They are for our students, and then any of the parents or guardians or whomever is working with them. Okay. So perspective, keep that in mind. We got to tuck that away because that's going to color everything that we go through. And again, please feel free to use the chat if you have questions or if you have comments. Bridget will interrupt me if it's a question that I am not seeing. So let's move on to number 2, creating and archiving. So with Google Classrooms, creating them is super easy. Click that plus sign, create classroom, and boom, that's pretty much all. I think you're required to put in a title, and that's kind of it. Just create out the wazoo, right? Stop, hold up. Don't just create. Again, go back to number 1, that perspective. For a first grader, if you have 7 classrooms for them, you're giving them 7 opportunities to click on something. Percentage-wise, that's not great to get them to the right spot. However, if you're a first grade teacher and you only have 1 classroom, hey, guess what? That's the only place they have to go. So they'll be there. They'll join you there very quickly, very efficiently. Now, when you get older, talk about 4th graders. 4th graders can totally handle that. You could have a math classroom. You could have a reading classroom. You could have a science classroom. 4th graders, it's very much appropriate for them because if you think about it, I think like traditionally, like school supplies, like there's a folder for every content. Make that analogy for the kids. Okay, so where you have a folder for math and a folder for reading, you have a Google Classroom for math, you have a Google Classroom for reading. So if they're trying to do reading work, it makes sense to be in the reading classroom. For little ones, that comprehension is not always there. That's something that you'd have to really work on and build on. It's possible, just know that your learning curve is going to be a lot steeper with those little ones. Now, here's another thing that in my district, we're coming up to the end of the first quarter. We started right after Labor Day. So we're heading into that spot. And I've already had this conversation with numerous of my teachers. Sarah, there's so much already there. There's so much there. And it's overwhelming to scroll. And I said, hey guys, in our district, we don't force create any of these classrooms. The teachers all self-create their classrooms. So that's a different ballgame if your district is forcing them on you. And again, think about perspective on this. But if you stop and you think, you don't have to use the same classroom that you made on day 1 all the way through the end of the school year. You don't have to. Nobody's going to make you. In fact, I'm encouraging my teachers to create a new classroom for quarter 2. After all, that break between first and second quarter, and then again at second and third quarter and third and fourth quarter, it's going to allow that whole complete separation of work. Because the other comment that I get is, I don't want kids going back and continuing to work on old stuff. Well, at the end of the quarter, let's cut that off. Let's end that class. Let's make a new one. At that point, the kids are probably a little bit more accustomed to using the technology. If you've been building on that first quarter, make a new classroom. And I know it sounds very cumbersome, but it actually works really well because it gives you, the teacher, a means to kind of up your game or clean up an organization structure that you didn't really care for, or you didn't think that was working really great for you and your students. So it's kind of like the restart button. So you can come back and you can start over. But then again, for your students, it's not 8,000 things that they're scrolling through. And here's the best part. Archive it. Don't delete it. Archive it. All of the work remains in your drive. It remains in the student's drive. It's not gone. Now, if you delete it, it's gone. Don't delete. Don't ever delete. Don't delete. There's no point. Don't delete. Archive it. It's not right there in front of your kid's face. It's back there kind of in the back. It's hiding in plain sight, right? Chances are your primary students are not going to be they're not going to be jumping into their drive, and they're not going to be scrolling through their Google Drive. Now your older students might, and that might become a problem. But if you just teach them, like I said, just go to classroom, just stay there, just look at this stuff. It's right here. I'm putting it out there for you. It's no problem. It's great. So keep that in mind as well. And for older students, I see Sarah P is in here. She's an 8th grade teacher. Sarah, you might think about creating new classrooms when you shift units. When I was in 7th and 8th grade, I would have a folder for each unit. And because I use Schoology, I was able to hide that folder so that the stuff wasn't gone, but it wasn't smacking the kids in the face all the time. It was right there. It gives the ability to just kind of help the kids, because they're no better at organization than we are. And if we can kind of help impose that organization, it's going to help them in the long run. Because again, what is our goal with classroom? To get the kids to do the work, not to figure out the organization structure, not to figure out, so my first period teacher does it this way and my third period teacher does it that way. And my gosh, like which is which? You know, let's simplify, keep it simple. So create classrooms. I like the quarter breaks. Semesters also make sense, but for older students, it might make more sense to do it by unit.
Hey, Sarah, just wanted to let you know that there are good comments about this.
Awesome. Keep throwing them in there. Keep throwing them in there. I love this, but again, please don't delete, don't delete, don't delete, don't delete. That's it's with Google. Don't delete. There's no point. Okay, so let's shift, but again, keep our perspective. This is all about the kids. It's all about the kids. Another very common question that I get is how many? And I've kind of touched on this before, and it's very different to use Google Classroom with a kindergarten class than it is to use it with an 8th grade class or high school class. Keep that in mind. I had during the closure, I had a 1st grade teacher contact me, and she said, well, I had this question and I didn't want to bother you. So I was talking to the 2nd grade teacher, and what she was telling me, she's like, Sarah, I just kind of feel overwhelmed. And I said, hold up. You're working with 1st grade. And I know 1st and 2nd.
Sarah, don't mean to disturb you, but can a topic be moved from one classroom to another with all the information in case the assignment carries over?
That becomes tricky. The quick answer is no, you can't just take the whole topic and everything that's nested underneath and pull it over. But here's what you can do. If it's going to carry over into the next grading period, if you will, don't archive that class yet. Leave that one open, keep it there, start building out your new one so you have the kids working in both. And again, be conscious of how many classrooms that actually means for your students to have. Finish that out and then archive, or in your new classroom, use the little tool called reuse post. Love this. Reuse this post and then maybe create a topic specifically for that and pull the stuff forward. Now, if it's something that you made a copy for each student, it's going to get a little bit wonky. But I go back to the end of the quarter for us always meant there's no changing of grades. So if it was something that I took a grade on in 1st quarter, I would say 99.9% of the time is not something that I was going to be using as a grade in 2nd quarter. And there's a little bit of finessing with that as well. But again, all of the work is still there. It's all in Drive, and the kids can attach things. It's a learning curve, but it can be done. And just that kind of gets a little bit wonky, if you will. Okay, hopefully that helps. I know it's not like a super easy, clean answer, but let's go back to how many classrooms that you have, because this kind of ties in a little bit, because when the kids go to the classroom homepage, you don't want them to have like 20 classes. That's a lot. And again, we're talking about students. And I always think of like this as percentages. The ability for your kids to get to the right class is going to be lessened when you have 10 classrooms, especially the younger they are, they get click happy. If they have 2 to pick from, you've got a 50-50 shot. If you have 10, you have a 10% chance that they're going to get to the right spot. But for me, it boils down to, and this blog that I've got linked on here is how many Google Classrooms should I have? If you click on that image, it'll take you out to the blog that I wrote about this, and it goes into a lot more detail. There's actually a little slide for each one of these 5 items. There's no perfect answer, to be honest with you. But keeping in mind, again, it goes back to perspective, these 5 items that I have linked down here. What is the age of your student? Older kids can handle far more. Younger kids cannot, or I shouldn't say cannot, should not be expected to handle that much. What is the student's previous experience? And this one a little bit on the teacher end, like what is the teacher's previous experience with classroom? If they're a proficient user, chances are they're going to truly understand how to make this all work for their students. But if the kids have never had Google Classroom experience, probably don't want to throw 20 classes at them, or maybe even 5. And again, if they're younger and have had no experience, keep it super simple. If they're older and they've had no experience, you probably could still do 2 or 3 classes, because again, make it that folder analogy. This is your math Google Classroom, just like your folder. This is your reading Google Classroom, just like your folder. Keep those things in mind, and you see how that whole perspective of it kind of shifts as you go up. Another thing is co-teachers. Do you have an intervention specialist with you? Do you have speech working with you? Do you have title working with you? You know, do you have where you're sharing students? Using that co-teacher feature, kind of rhymes, can be very scary. And we'll talk about co-teachers a little bit later, but it can, again, be very beneficial for your students. Because again, if they don't have to have this whole separate class for this whole separate thing, and it all just marries into all of the reading stuff just goes into the reading classroom, it's for the kids, it's for the students. As a teacher, you're going to figure it out. You're an adult, or you can find your tech integration specialist or another teacher that's really adept at using Google Classroom. They'll help walk you through it. Contact me, email me, tweet at me, you know, all that kind of good stuff. And then another thing to consider is the content. If you're a self-contained teacher and your students are first grade and they've never had Google Classroom experience, and you're self-contained, it probably makes the most sense. 1 classroom, that's it, easy peasy. If you're an older, like a 4th grade teacher, self-contained, it might make sense to have 1 Google Classroom. I have several teachers this year that did this. And it worked. It got the kids where they needed to be. They were able to kind of build in the organization structure to teach the students that. And then I've had the conversation, Sarah, when we go to 2nd quarter, I'm going to make a math and a reading and a science. My kids are ready for it. Rock on. Let's build these kids up. Let's take them with us as we go. 8th grade, if you only teach social studies, like I used to, and I love it. So social studies teachers out there, love it, love it, love it, love it. Again, you might have your classroom set up unit 1, new classroom unit 2, new classroom unit 3, you know, or this is 1st quarter. It's got to make sense. And then finally, the 5th consideration in how many classes that you make is keep in mind, now more than ever, parents. Parents are right there. They are an incredibly valuable piece to this equation. We're going to talk about parents a lot more in detail later on. It's another one of my 10 top tips to know and to do, as well as the co-teachers and all that jazz. But parents, now more than ever, we have got to keep them in mind, because if you're hybrid or you're remote, you already know that parent support at home is valuable. And the easier and simpler we make it for the kids to actually do the work, we've just upped our chances of them actually doing the work, right? I mean, that's our goal. Okay, any questions that I've missed, Bridget, or we good? I think we're probably good. I'm gonna keep going then. Item type.
You're good.
All right. All right, item types. This is another one of my super passionate current things that I just, perspective is number one. Using the right item types is crucial. Okay, I'm a mom. I have 3 girls. 2 of them use Google Classroom. The other one is in high school and they're a Microsoft school. So anyway, don't get me started on that. That's fine. Just, you know, it's just different. So my younger 2's teachers do use Google Classroom, and as well as me being a co-teacher in a good number of the classrooms at my 2 elementary buildings that I work with. And I've seen this done well, and I've seen this done to where it becomes a hiccup. It becomes a hurdle for the students, for the parents to then help navigate with. Please know and understand what the item types are meant to do. And I really kind of slowed that down because I want you to soak that in. There is a purpose for each one of these item types. I've got a little picture down there. Assignment, quiz assignment, question, material, reuse, post, and topic. There's a specific reason for each of those. There's a specific purpose. And when our purposes get kind of muddled, guess what else gets muddled? What do I do? What is this? You get that confusion. Keep it simple, keep it clean, and keep it consistent. And again, I've got a blog over there to the right where I go into a tremendous amount of detail. Google Classroom has been a big focus for me for probably like the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks. So if some of this stuff is like hitting you and you're like, I can't like soak it all in right now, which I totally get, please go check out those blogs that I've got. There's a slide deck with each of them that goes through. So it's kind of like I'm there with you, but I'm not there with you. Now you could probably hear my voice as you go through these, and reach out, tweet at me, email me. I've got my email listed in there and everything. Comment at the bottom of my blog. Please do if you have questions. So here's the thing. If you put it in as an assignment, that means you're fully intending to get something back from the kids. Please don't put links to a program or links to a video that you want them to watch unless you're intending for them to do something with it. That'd be like handing out a sheet of paper to the kids and saying, here, this is what we're going to do now. And then it just sits there and you don't do anything with it. Assignments are truly intending for you to get something back from the kids. It might be a physical piece of paper, and then you have to teach them how to click done or turn in. It might be a digital something or another, document, slide, drawing, or whatever, and then they would naturally submit that back because that's what an assignment is. It could be a watch this video and answer this question on a Google form. Keep that in mind. The assignment tells the student that, hey, my teacher wants me to do something. And when you use that, please use the due dates. Please use the due dates. Please give it some kind of value. And I always analogize, I don't even know if that's a word, but if my principal gave me a survey to fill out or something, an activity to do, and I said, well, when's this due? Like, is there any value in this? It's probably going to get put on the corner of my desk and then buried, because if I am not expected to complete it and turn it back, or I'm not being told that there's any value in doing it, I've got this stack of 8,000 other things that do have value and they do have dates, and I've got to get this done. This is something that's probably going to fall off my radar. Now, as a teacher, I know the inclination is really to do it anyway. I mean, after all, I'm being told like teachers are very good at that compliance piece, but give it 2 points. It says to the student, I expect you to do this. Give it a due date, even if it's in a week or it's tomorrow. It tells the student, I expect you to do this and get it back to me. If we want to get these kids to understand the value of the work that we're handing them, put value on it. It doesn't have to be high ticket value. It doesn't have to be done at tomorrow at 2:58 p.m. But if you put something there, it's a Jedi mind trick that I like to share with teachers. Putting a due date on it means that it has to get done. Putting a value on it, some kind of point value, whether it's a nominal like 2 points or 10 points, it puts a value on it. If you don't put value on it, there's none. Keep that in mind. Quiz assignment, not one of my faves, but it'll automatically create you a Google form that you can share with the students and they can do that. Personally, I love creating the Google Forms. When I'm ready to create the Google Forms, save them in my drive, and then I like to add them in as an assignment. So quiz assignments are good. I just tend to use those pretty much never. The question I love, it is a short answer or multiple choice, and it literally is just a question. And I've recommended to my younger teachers, this works great as you get older too, but it's an easy step into using Classroom. It's an easy way for you to do like a real quick check. Build it right there. It's one question. What did you learn yesterday? It could be an exit ticket. What's your biggest takeaway from class today? What do you still have questions about? They can type stuff in. Hey, they're practicing typing. Put some kind of a value on it. Give it like 2 points or a point or something just so that the kids do it. Give them a due date so that you, again, are telling them, I expect you to get this done. And hey, if you have students that are at home, kind of helps keep them in order too, doesn't it? Using, some of those previously suggested, the number system, maybe an emoji. Do a check-in with the kids. How are you feeling today? How are you feeling about the division test we took yesterday? Are you ready for the social studies test that we're going to have in 3 days? Plop in little emojis as their answers. It's kind of cool. And then if you allow the kids to all see responses, it actually builds out little graphs for them. And then you can do a little data analysis. See, like I get so nerdy about this kind of stuff. Like you can start layering in so many different thought processes, layer in data analysis, typing skills, quick check-ins, just by using that little question thing. And the best part, you jump down to more with me to that reuse post. You could reuse that several times if you wanted to, and it just becomes that quick check-in. It works wonderfully. It really does. All right, material. Second top most used item type. Material, you're sharing something with the kids. All they need to do is be able to have access to it. Maybe it's a video you want them to watch. Maybe it's a link to a program that doesn't show up automatically for the kids, like maybe on like a homepage or some sort. Maybe it's a link to a Wakelet collection that you've collected Halloween activities in. Hey, that's coming up next week. I actually do have a Halloween Wakelet collection that you could pull in some different activities. Share those 3 or 5 activities with your students. It's material. You're not actually expecting them to turn something back into you for a grade or for a check to make sure that they've done it. Use that material for that purpose. It's to share something, not for the kids to complete and return. Reuse post. I really didn't think too much about this one about 6 months ago, but I've really found a lot of value in it because when you reuse a post, it brings everything over for you, even from archived classes. Get it off the screen for the kids when you archive it, but you have access to all of it. I was shocked when I opened this up the one time. I didn't realize how many classes I had already archived. And I was like, wow, I can pull anything that I want in from 2-3 years ago, whatever it was that I'd archived them. That is pretty cool. Now it brings it back over to you in an editable form So you can always make adjustments to it. Maybe you're reusing a post that you put out there for 10 of your students, and now you want to post it for 3 more of your students, but make some changes to either the instructions or to the document that you've added to it. That reuse post, phenomenal. Get to know it. I've got a lot about it on that little blog over there. Another one, topics. What we did for our teachers this year is we pretty much told them K-12, we're going to all organize the same. Now, again, when I say the same, I'm not saying identical, because we're using Classroom for the elementaries and we're using Schoology for the upper grades. But what we did was we told them that we wanted them to use Google Classroom topics to be weeks. So whatever this week was, September, or not September, going back in time, October, maybe 18th through the 23rd was a topic. And then anything we wanted them to do in that week, put it in there. And then as you scroll down, here's the week before, and then again, the week before. But using topics as dates for the week. And then the same in Schoology, their folders, it was expected to be weekly folders, and then you're nesting items in there. Think about how amazing that is for our parents now, whether they have a high schooler, middle schooler, or an elementary student. Doesn't matter the platform they're going in, but we have that consistent organization structure. I was super excited when and nervous, quite honestly nervous, when my curriculum director threw that out and she said, this is how I want it to be done. And I was like, rock on, this is fantastic. Thank you for remembering the parents. Thank you for keeping them in mind, because that was a struggle in the spring. You have this teacher doing it that way, you have that teacher doing it this way. And it didn't matter if you have 5 Google Classrooms or you had 7 classrooms at the high school or 7 Schoology sections at the high school. They're all organized the same. So I, as a parent, watching my child do work from September 6th, it's October 24th, we got some issues here, right? It allows me as a parent to use the dates to help guide me. Love it. Okay, I know I'm running out of time. I'm only on number 4, moving on to number 5. This is brilliant. It came out this summer, early August, maybe. I don't remember exactly when. Again, I've got some information about it in a blog. I'm going to try to get through all of these so I can at least touch on them. Teach your kids the to-do. It's right there. To-do is for the kids. To review is for the teachers. It is fantastic, because this was a big pain point for a lot of my teachers in the spring. Sarah, my kids can't find what they've done. They're not sure, the parents aren't sure if they've done it or not. Number one, a lot of them probably weren't using that turn-in button, so it kind of grays it out, which, did you know that? Grays out assignments if they click that turn-in. But this to-do says this is the assigned stuff, this is the missing stuff, and this is the done stuff. It's great. It's great. And it layers all of their classes in there. So it doesn't matter if they have 1 or they have 10. It layers all of the work in there by date. And then there's also a section with no due date. Please put dates on your stuff. Please, for the kids' sake, please do that. And again, for the teachers to review, it tells you what you've already reviewed and what you still need to review. Wonderful. Lots of detail in that blog. Your settings for all classes, it's great. I am a co-teacher in a lot of classes. I don't need to see the emails every time they post something. I don't. So I know that I can go into all of my settings, go down to the bottom, click settings, and I can turn off email notifications for particular classes that I don't need to have the notifications on for. As a teacher, probably don't want to do that unless you're a co-teacher or you are a student in somebody else's class to kind of help give eyeballs on that. I have a little video here that you are welcome to watch. I also wrote 2 blogs on this, a deep dive and then a deeper dive into Google Classroom settings. And that marries in nicely to number 7, specific classroom settings. So there's the settings for all of them. And then each Google Classroom has its own specific settings. And I love this because how you set it up for your reading class doesn't have to be the same as how you have it set up for your math class. You can play around and figure out what works best for your students, for you. And a big thing that I will suggest up here that I have, turn off notifications to where the classwork gets posted to the stream. The stream is utterly confusing. It's just this big, long, like social media-esque list. Whew. I had so many teachers, Sarah, it's like six of them down. Well, right, because that was the sixth one back that she'd posted. Get rid of that. Honestly, I tell my teachers, don't put anything on the stream. The only thing to put on the stream is, I had a second grade teacher, we got creative. And I said, just post a little message that says, hey, and use the up arrow emoji, click on classwork. I've seen teachers build that into their whole classroom, the banner that they have, just with that arrow pointing up to the classwork tab. And again, the younger you go with students, the less value that stream has. So don't put anything there. Don't do it. Get them to go right to the classwork page. Again, that might be some feedback that you offer to Google. Little circle, bottom left-hand corner, question mark. Hey, Google, give us the ability to get rid of the stream or something, just do that. Again, I've got 2 blogs posted, a little video that goes into far more detail than I can right now because I have 5 minutes left. Number 8, co-teachers. I talked about this a little bit before. Teachers fail a lot.
Hey, Sarah, just wanted you to know 5 minutes.
Thank you, Bridget. Co-teachers. We get a lot of ownership and possession over our stuff. Like, don't touch my stuff. This is my classroom, don't touch it. I used to hate it when I had subs and I came back and my class was a mess. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I have that. I'm a little on the OCD side too. It's all good. I embrace it. I use it to strengthen myself, right? Keep myself in mind. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, classrooms are not for me. They're not for me as a teacher. They're for my students. I need to welcome those teachers in, and those teachers can specifically post to individual kids. Have that professional courtesy conversation. Hey, I'm going to be a co-teacher in your classroom, and I'm not going to touch your stuff. I promise. And when I put my stuff in there, can you promise me that you won't touch my stuff? Okay, good. Honest. Let's go. Wonderful. The next one, feedback and grading. Here's an idea. And I hate to leave this with 4 minutes left, but I do want you to kind of absorb this. Feedback is more important than grading. I'm glad none of you can jump through the computer and like smack me. The thing about our feedback is going to be what allows your students to grow, to adjust, to learn more, to get better. You give them a grade, they're going to look at that grade, boom, done, and I'm moving on to the next thing. Jennifer Gonzalez had a guest blogger, and I cannot off the top of my head remember, but I've got it again, a blog right there for you. Click on it, it goes into detail. But she had a guest blogger that wrote about a philosophy called delaying the grade. You give a student a grade, and I'm 99% sure they're going to look at that grade and then they're going to move on to the next item. And I get teachers say, well, they don't read their feedback with it. Of course not, because you gave them a grade. They're done. Don't put a grade in there. Give them that feedback. Expect them to do something with it. And then when you get to a point where you consider this as a hard deadline, it's done, then put the grade in. Okay, again, got to move on. I got 2 minutes left. Number 10, parents, don't forget about them. Please, we've talked about them some. I'm a mom. I love the guardian summaries that I get from my kids, for my 2 girls. Put a lot of information in this blog that I've got linked. I even wrote out like a little letter that you can take, copy, adjust, modify to whatever it is that you feel appropriate for your students. And if you're not sure about Google Classroom Guardian Summaries, please contact me. I'd love to help you out. They're fantastic, and a lot of information in there. There is a secret word for this session in order to get the certificate. The word is learn. I'm tucking that in there now so I don't forget. Learn with a capital L. So you're going to need to remember that. So maybe write it down, or wherever, capital L. And then I know I'm whizzing through this. I have additional resources. Please check some of these out if you are interested in learning more. I've linked a bunch of my blogs, all specific to Google Classroom throughout the previous part of this presentation. But I have some other good items. That first day of Classroom is directly from Google, their Help Center. I've got a Wakelet collection all about Google Classroom. I can't even tell you how many items are in there. There's a lot. I have a Wakelet collection specific to Guardian emails right here. Here's a link to blogs that I've written specifically about it. Eric Kurtz is phenomenal. Matt Miller, Casey Bell, and Alice Keeler. I've got them all posted, linked down here because it is great for them. They share out a tremendous amount of good information. I also have Desiree. Thank you, Desiree, again, for allowing me this opportunity. And with a minute left, thank you, everyone, for coming. I really do appreciate it. It's been wonderful getting to hang out with you guys. Please do tweet at me, email me, check out my blog. You can respond to comments in there or respond with comments on any of my blogs. And I promise that I will get back to you. And have a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy all of the other TCCA sessions. I'm presenting again with Desiree here in 2 hours, I believe. Oh, told you I wasn't going to get through all of it. Bridget, thank you so much for being on the backside and helping me out, keeping me on track. I really do appreciate it.